Same to you.
I hope you had a good lunch. Quick lunch. I did as well, but it was very good. I'm trying not to eat too much so that my stomach gets used to all the spices, but it's so good. I just wanted to keep eating and eating. And I've learned to not finish my plate because I'll get another and I'll get more and I'll get more. So just leave a little bit, right? And then they won't keep bringing you more roti. Like, how much can you eat in one setting? 1, 2, 3. That's a lot. Really happy with the way that the morning as it leaked into the afternoon went, and just thank you all for sharing so far. And as I mentioned, my hopes for this session, I'm already seeing them realized in the way that you're willing to talk about things that are very important and very personal to you. And I think that is a really important sign of investment, because by being here, you're investing. You're all busy people. I know that you're managing your phones and trying to listen and everything at the same time. But I also appreciate the fact that when you shared, the students who were sitting back there were listening to you. And I think that they were really struck by many of the things that you said. And actually during the lunch break, 2 of them who did not want to talk all morning came back and they shared some thoughts and ideas with me about teaching and what motivated them, important events that have happened in their lives. And they talked about just being able to hear what you had to say. And I think that sends a really good message in terms of what's happened. So just a little bit of feedback. I do have a concern about the homework I assigned this morning.
Pardon?
The homework that I assigned.
Homework?
You were supposed to email me your answers.
We didn't get time.
And I don't have a single one. So I'm just reminding you.
Responses by 5.
There you go.
You will know able to get the responses by 5.
Okay. You know, I'm joking. Okay. But anyway, I'm looking forward to reading that tonight, and that's gonna be a continuation of what we did today, and help me put things in perspective. Hi, you're late. Where were you? Inexcusable. I should have locked the door, right?
But tomorrow I'll be late.
Okay.
That's why I told you difference in the UG, PG, and PhD education. So this is a formal class.
Okay. Yes. Good. Okay. I like the way you frame that. So when we last left off, we were talking about the experiences that we had, and we talked a little bit about, I'd skipped a slide in terms of just thinking about who you are as an individual. And again, when you approach the work that you do, it's really hard to separate yourself from who you are. And I know a lot of people have struggled with that in their teaching careers because they want to be the person that knows everything and does it all right and never makes a mistake and has all the answers all the time. But when you do that, you often have to set aside who you are as a person. So I just encourage you to try to be as whole as possible. And I have an article that I will send you that you don't have to read this week, but I want to put it in your inbox and you'll get a chance to read it sometime when you have a break. But it talks a lot about being disconnected and how, as a teacher, when you're disconnected, you don't have that person, that human element to fall back on. And I know that's something that in my own teaching career evolved over time. And when I finally felt comfortable to be myself in the classroom, and I would run into students, at the grocery store or something like that, and they'd be like, "You're exactly the same as you are in the classroom. You tell bad jokes and you're all that." I'm like, "Yep." And it's taken me a long time to be that person, to be confident in who I am. And so I just encourage you all to work towards that and read what I send you. And again, down the road, think about how important that is. Okay, and I also mentioned the idea of having some formal ways of keeping track of what you do in terms of your own growth as a teacher. And I have to ask you about tenure and promotion and collegial processes. Do you call them collegial processes?
Career advancement.
Motion? What do you call that? Collegial processes, or what do you call that?
Career Advancement Scheme. Career Advancement Scheme, CAS.
CES.
CAS.
The CAS.
Yeah, CAS.
I'm writing that down.
Career Advancement Scheme.
Okay. It's all a big scheme. Okay. In Canada, we call them collegial processes because they are usually They're vetted by your peers, and it's usually a group of your colleagues who review your material and pass judgment, I guess, on you in terms of moving forward. And one of the things that is required of us, and likely for you, is evidence in research, service, and teaching. Does that sound familiar? So the idea of a case file, like, do you prepare a scorecard? Okay.
Where would that come? Teaching, research, or extension? Just have a look.
Oh, you brought it.
This is something, no.
Okay.
Office guy brought it. There's a company, Punjab, our government and state government is importing some medicines from Australia. So
Okay.
I'm supposed to vet it
Oh,
and make sure it is a feed additive, supplement, or a medication or what. So what do you classify in teaching, research, or extension?
Administration.
I don't know. Administration, maybe?
So it is one of the reasons I want to be a pharmacologist,
Yeah.
because that is related to pharma industry also.
Wow, good timing. That was perfect.
Yeah.
But that would be an example of the many activities that you do that all come together to make you a professor, right? That they all come together. And a lot of times the hardest one for people to figure out, although that one was really difficult that you just shared, I don't know, is teaching. So how do you show that you are growing as a teacher? How do you show who you are as a teacher? Because research, it's where are your publications, what's the index, all those kinds of things. Is it in Scopus? Is it not in Scopus? Like all of those really quantifiable ways of doing it. Service, we've had some really great examples of service, she even shared here today, like vaccinations, creating connections with your local community. Like those are really good examples of service. But with teaching, here's your classes. They close the door, you go inside, they close the barn, you go inside or whatever. And the magic that happens there, it's often hard to contribute in a positive way to your case file or your scorecard without having evidence of teaching. And some of what we're talking about now, today and through the rest of the days, I believe are very helpful for you to be able to show evidence of growth as a teacher and effectiveness as a teacher. And those tools can also be helpful as you're developing your sense of self or your identity. And I've got on here peer assessment. Some of you have already talked about peer assessment and in an informal way. Do you do formal peer evaluations? Do your colleagues come into your classes at all? No? Okay. So that's one that's quite popular in my university. And we actually have forms that people fill out, and it's a fairly intricate process. I might share them with your dean, because we just had some new ones, and they're even better because they also help with online teaching if any of you do online teaching.
So you are suggesting peer assessment?
Yes, because what happens in that environment is
I come to your class.
Yeah, it can be as simple as that. If you are a department chair at my university, you are actually required to set up peer evaluation. So in the
Well, how about
year,
I scratch your back, you scratch mine?
well, if you don't have a system,
Yeah.
the scratch system works.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's good to also have a system, because then those materials from that system go in front of a committee who hasn't scratched anyone's back, right?
Okay.
And they need to be able to go through and identify that. So if you are talking about many of the things that were discussed this morning, it's good to have a colleague come in and give you feedback. You can use it in your case file or your scorecard. And it's also because if it's someone knowledgeable in your subject area, then they would understand. If it's someone who is a good teacher, or one is recognized for their abilities, then their opinion of you would carry more weight. So it's often a good idea for junior faculty to get a senior faculty to come in and give them feedback. So organized and structured feedback. And it can be, how is the class going? How is the interaction? Do the assignments make sense? Do the lessons? Were the students paying attention? One of the ones that I'll do a lot is I'll do a grid of the classroom seating arrangement. And every 5 minutes, I'll just look, or every 10 minutes, I'll look and see, okay, paying attention, not paying attention, paying attention. And at the end, I can give that to my colleague and they will say, oh, I had no idea. Or you only talk to the right side of the room and not the left side. So all of those things come into play in terms of being a more effective teacher. What I always find with peer assessment is if I give someone a specific focus, then I get specific feedback, which can be very helpful. So maybe I know that I'm very good at getting groups to interact, but my lecturing style isn't very engaging. So I'll ask someone, I'll say, I'm going to try something different today with my lecture. Can you please give me some feedback on it? Those kinds of formal events are very handy because then you get the artifact, which is the report that someone writes up, and then you can share it. And I often tell junior faculty, it's always good to have a really bad one at the beginning, to have a bad lesson. And then hopefully you get better over time because they're usually really nervous. It's the first time someone's come into their classroom, and then there are more things that you can work on. So with that first one, then you can pull out one or two things, focus on them, and then you can pull out a few other things. And what that shows is your growth as an instructor, as a teacher over time. Very helpful. And it again, we honor those informal ways that people have learned from mentors and parents and students, but it's also very good to have that, start to have that formal way of giving you feedback on your identity. And the other thing is, if it's a colleague that you know, they will say, when we get together, you're always so friendly and excited. And in your classroom, I didn't see that. I saw someone who was very rigid, and you might not even notice you do that. And that's something that can be very helpful. You know, I never thought of it that way. And you can make small adjustments in your instructional style that all of a sudden make you more welcoming or make your students feel more engaged. So that's something that if you haven't done a formal peer assessment, and again, I'm not sure if you guys have a faculty union and things like that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes faculty unions aren't really big on those kinds of assessments. So we'll see what's.
We have got Gadwasu Teachers Association.
Okay, yeah. Maybe they have something, but that's really a good place to start, especially if you're new and you need to build up your portfolio to have that evidence. I always joke, because I'm a full professor now, I don't have to do anything. I can do everything wrong and I don't have to, but I still do because it drives me crazy. I have that need to continue to grow. But for people who are early on in their academic career, it can be really good to have a system in place over time. And so over 2, 3, 4 years, you could show through a number of peer feedback sessions how you've changed, what you do differently. Yes.
How do you select those peers who are going to assess?
That's an excellent question. And I mentioned that the department heads in my university will set up a schedule at the beginning. So I might pair the two of you up. And so you would evaluate his class, you would evaluate yours, but I would often look at the subject area. So that if someone is in the classroom and they don't really know what you're teaching, it's hard for them to be really objective about what's going on. Or if it's a particular situation where someone is struggling, sometimes an experienced mentor coming in and they can be a little more gentle about it. They're not in competition. So if you had two people who were, say, at the assistant rank, they might be trying to make themselves look a little bit better. So I'm glad you asked that question. I think it's a really important one, this to be strategic around how you pair people up. Or you may have, I know some universities, they give faculty release time. So if you're someone who is very passionate about teaching and knowledgeable, they may give you a course release, and then you would go in and do the observations in a whole bunch of courses, usually not at the assistant or associate professor level, but sometimes it happens. Is that helpful in terms of thinking about it? Okay, yeah.
One is professor, that does not mean he is a good teacher.
I know.
Well,
sometimes
one assistant professor could be a better teacher than his professor.
Well, there is a hidden definition. Assistant professor, he reads and studies and also teaches. Associate professor, he simply teaches, and professor neither teaches nor studies, nor allows others to study.
Okay, wait, let's not have a fight. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
professor
yes.
only.
Yeah.
Correct.
About how hard life is and how rough everything is, yes. But you make a really valid point, and I think it piggybacks on what you were talking about, or it connects to what you were talking about. If I say piggybacks, does that make sense? Like piggybacks on something? It means you pile on top of it? Okay. I am trying not to use jargon from North America, so anyway. And a good department chair, a good department head will recognize if someone is knowledgeable. And I've seen assistant professors who are really the best teachers ever. And I would trust them to go into any environment and give a really solid assessment of what's going on. And the same way that I've seen full professors who are exactly the same, they're passionate and they're engaged, but I've also seen some that profess and only profess, or they profess to know everything and they just run the other person down. So it's a delicate process. And that's why I asked if you had a teachers union or teachers association, because they are often very protective people and they don't trust anyone. I don't know if any of you are on the teachers association or not, but I don't know.
It's not strong.
No.
It's very strong. It's not strong.
No, okay.
Very flexible.
Yeah, okay. The one I have is full of lawyers and like people in our College of Law. And I don't know, they just give me a raise. Every time there's a contract, I know I get a raise. I'm like, okay, you guys are great. But I don't often agree with some of the other, like sometimes they're just picking a fight for the sake of picking a fight.
Hey, your first point, I mean, to keep on learning forever, that's something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, when you come across an article, say, I have got a clinician's brief, that journal. So most of the things I know about that. But after, say, a few pages, I'll come across something that I don't know. That helps me to know that I am growing. So
Yes.
that's also a way of self-assessment.
Yes.
That provided you are interested in reading that. But I mean, if you come across something which you don't know, then you can say, okay, you are still growing.
Yes.
Right?
Fabulous. And we're going to get to that. It's almost like I planted you here today because you ask good questions that lead up to other things. I think I planted all of you here actually, but that was a really good question because I'm going to, as we get through this list, sorry, I'm pointing here, but it's the list up there. There's one thing that we're going to talk about in terms of how you would articulate your growth. And one of the things you might say is, I was reading this article the other day and I came across something I'd never seen before. And it made me think, and I went online, I went to the library, I found another book, and now I know more in that area because I was reading and I came across something. But I'm going to show you where that might go. Student feedback, we talked a bit about, and some of you were saying, students will let me know. The students that were here today were terrified, right? Yeah, didn't you see that? I couldn't get any of them. They were nervous. They didn't want to talk. Okay. Anyway,
It's a bit different over here.
yes.
But I believe the students here are a bit shy.
Yeah.
If you compare those in the north, the education system we have,
Okay. Yeah.
starting from the grade 1 onwards, we don't have more interaction with the teachers.
Yes.
In North America, the way the teachers teach there, it's a bit different.
Yeah.
So I have seen those people teaching, and I got a chance to go to a school, and then I saw that the teacher was teaching like she was a grandmother of those kids, and each of one was raising his or her hand. But it's different over here.
Yeah.
They were encouraged to ask questions, but it's a bit different.
Yeah.
The way I have been,
Yes.
most of you have experienced the same thing.
That
could be the reason.
Yeah.
They were not speaking.
Very differential to, yeah.
So the same thing you have seen is, for all of us, means when you start your session today mornings, most of us were not trying to means the interaction was not that, but with the time you will feel that you will be more in interaction mode.
Good.
But this is how we have been.
Yeah.
So
and it's tough to go against that when you're looking for student feedback. So that if they are used to not having as much voice, or that their opinion doesn't matter. And all of a sudden, like I did today, tell me what you think, right? I'm all over them. And like you say, they're not used to being addressed that way, or I kind of put them on the spot a few times and they weren't comfortable, but they came back after when they did feel comfortable and they had thought about it. So it's important for you to give them that voice again in a formal way for your development, rather than I hate your class or I love your class. Like that doesn't help us.
Even
be better
in the
teachers.
class, if
Yeah.
you encourage them, some of those they will speak up. But
Yeah.
still, there is major of the class is not going to ask you questions.
Yeah.
Most of them, and then they, after the class, they come outside.
And
And
there's a reason.
this is what truth is, right?
Yes.
So then they ask questions. Okay, I didn't understand that. In that class, they are not.
Yeah.
In their hand.
And there's a reason, because our students are not as mature as their students, because they come after high school. So that could be one of the reasons.
That could be.
Potentially, yeah. But I think you're right. And it's good that you're thinking about what your students bring.
Hmm.
And the good part is that you're willing to listen to them after class and
Yeah.
entertain those questions.
Everybody does.
Yeah.
Actually, everybody does.
And I think that's,
However, we try to encourage them even in the class.
yeah.
Ask if you have not understand something. But I don't know why they, but afterwards they come and.
So I have already, like, whatever the course I teach, like I teach normally anesthesia part or the, even equine part, equine surgery part. So I always create a WhatsApp group with the students. And 1 week before, I always send them the lecture.
Good.
Okay, I tell them that you read whole of the lecture if you have any query. So within the lecture, and if you want to add something, you can add, you can, but nobody contributes.
Hmm.
But still, like, even after the class, they always come. And even in off times, like when I'm in my chamber, they always come to for a new question. So there is always a problem in the system. Definitely there is a problem with the system.
Now, do you have a formal way of doing that? Like at the end of your class, do you hand out a piece of paper and ask for their feedback, or do you have a web online?
We don't have.
We don't have. Like,
Okay.
No,
Has been,
after
I think,
semester.
done maybe 2 years back. That was official level.
So it is done, sir.
Yeah.
It is done actually after in a year 3 times.
Okay.
Means they are evaluating it, they are doing it.
But I think that is.
But they are not-
Evaluation can't be trusted. That evaluation.
So
can't be
that's,
trusted.
we are not talking about trusted or not trusted, but it is being done.
Some of the teachers in the top, which I consider, or like most of the.
That is true,
teachers-
sir, but
Yeah.
it is being done.
Yes.
It is being done.
Yes.
He's right, he's right.
However it is, and I know it's not,
He's correct, I am agreeing, but that is the problem of evaluation.
yeah.
That is not the problem of why the evaluation is done or not, is it done or not?
One difference,
That I understand.
The students, they like the teacher which is more friendly.
yeah,
Yes.
They tell more stories rather than giving knowledge.
yeah.
Okay.
But in the end of the story, now you will find those teachers are more successful.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think I'm just pleased that you are interested in recognizing that maybe there's a system. It's clearly not consistent. It's not even consistent in the room. And what results are we getting from it? Can they be trusted? And I said right at the beginning, if you're a female instructor in post-secondary, your evaluations are going to be lower.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. And that's a universal truth. And so that's why we're trying to get away from those, to have, rather than ask the students, what did I teach you? We're asking the students now, what did you learn? So it's on the students to be able to respond to that. And it's not, I've honestly seen this. You wore a Paisley outfit to class 2 times during the class, and it was ugly. And you're a bad person. Like I've read that in people's, it has nothing to do with what they're learning, nothing to do with what's being taught, but it's how certain people are being targeted through evaluation. So student feedback is good if it's set up properly and it's constructed and students know how to give good feedback. That's the other thing. We don't tell students what to say.
The longer the.
I'm getting to you right after this. Okay, go ahead.
Longer the performa of assessment, the student, they are hesitant to fill it.
Mhm.
And that poor is the feedback.
Yes.
They will just simply do it.
Tick mark.
It is it, it is okay, it is okay. It should be crispy and really most relevant so that it can be evaluated in a better.
I
And
love,
good feedback
yeah.
is there.
I love that you use the word crispy. You've used it like 4 times
Yeah.
today. I love that word.
So I think, sir, I want to add one thing.
Okay.
So the student, they normally, what they do is, whatever the senior they say, they make the impression for a particular student based on the senior's view, not based on their view.
Yeah.
So whatever the senior will say, that is not a good teacher.
Tradition.
Because
Yes.
it's not their view, it's the senior
Yeah.
view. And it's continued like for generations.
First impression is the last impression.
Rajneesh.
So I think this assessment, it's means, so if we see these differences over here, the same thing is globally too, means it's not only here we are having these kind of issues, but it's everywhere. But could be the type or the kind of those discrepancies would be different. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think again, it's good to recognize that is something that's flawed better than having nothing at all. So that's another debate that's going on.
Yes.
So at least we have something here when we do that feedback. And it may not be accurate,
Exactly.
but I don't know, like maybe it's better to not have anything rather than to have people complaining about what you're wearing in class, which has nothing to do and doesn't help you grow and understand who you are as a teacher. At all.
When you, okay.
Okay, go ahead.
sir.
No, please.
No, you waited forever.
Yeah.
I'll give you a follow-up and then.
Yeah.
Sorry for jumping in.
No.
So I was about to say that means, so I forgot, I don't know.
It's okay.
I think it was brilliant, whatever you're going to say, it was brilliant, and I look forward to it popping into my.
I think.
Yeah.
So I just correlating with Dr. Anand's surgeons, that
Yeah.
question that nobody responds much, only 2-3% people, students respond. You know, there's a difference between your country's education, professional education and our. Yours is damn costly, very costly. So there they say, hey, we are paying you, tell us this, do
Mhm.
this. Okay, so there were a lot of interactions with, here it is relatively quite cheap
Yes.
education.
Yeah.
So I think that could be one reason. Here,
Yeah.
average student loan in US, I've lived in that place 4 years, average student loan is 350,000
it's
US
crazy.
dollars. So they say, we are paying you. Okay, you tell us this, tell us this. Here it's not like that.
Mhm.
It's dad's money. Okay, it's quite cheap and okay, nobody cares.
Accountability is different then.
Yes.
And same thing if some NRI students.
Non-resident Indians,
Oh, yeah.
American or Canadian.
They are from Canada here. And even they are paying more, many times than Indian students.
But it's
Many-
still
many
way
times.
less.
But they are more reluctant than Indians.
Yes.
They are feeling it's so easy that.
It's quite cheap education
quite
here.
cheap.
Yeah, isn't it $100,000 Canadian or something like
Yeah,
that for the whole program?
For the American or Canadian
Yeah.
students, 105,000 US dollars, but for Indian students, something like $20,000. Entire degree.
Yeah.
So yours 350,000 hit 20,000. So just
No,
not even 20,000.
Yeah.
So I'll say 5,000.
5,000 US dollars for the entire degree. And yours is 350,000.
It's a lot. Trust me, I have a son in university. I know it's, and he's not gonna be a vet.
There can be
So,
$1,000 per week.
Yeah.
$1,000 per week in US, UC Davis. So the professor told me, why should I tell you? I said, please tell me. He said our students are paying $1,000 a week.
Mhm.
You are just visiting. So they are my preference, not you. So $1,000 a week for 4.5 years versus 5,000 for 4.5 years, just 350,000 versus 5,000. So
It's-
accountability is, I mean,
Yes, and it may influence the student feedback you get. I want to move on to the next one. I promise you guys are going to get out of here early. And I also joke in all of my classes, I always say, we're going to get done early today. Do you think I have ever gotten done early in my life?
no. I don't
Not a
think so.
chance. No, never. Okay. Anyway, you have been graced with my inability to get things done. Inventories is another one. So when I say inventory, I'm talking about formally prepared things that you can do or have done to you. And I think I've got some pictures of some here. Is it working?
Okay.
There we go. So for example, I went into a drawer in my office and opened it up, and these are all different scales and systems and procedures that I've gone through. A lot of them are related to leadership, but they provide evidence of where I'm at, where I can be successful, where my gaps are. And there is no shortage of these kinds of things that you can do. So you can do Myers-Briggs, for example, whether you believe in the Myers-Briggs tests. There's some debate. It's a personality profile, but what it will inform you or inform others about where your strengths might be and how you might choose a teaching strategy that fits. So if you are kind of outgoing and gregarious, maybe that means you're directed towards something that has a high interactive level with your students. Or if you are maybe more introverted, or if you're not as, in people's faces, then you might choose something where the students are doing more of the interacting as opposed to you interact. So those kinds of things can be really helpful. They also allow you to track your progress over time. So you can do these one time, and then a few years later, you can do them again, and you can show, again, when you're writing up, I have grown in these areas. The first time I did it, it told me I could work on some of these. I could be more empathetic, for example. And so that's one that came up on mine, that I needed to be a little more empathetic and understanding of my students. So I've worked hard at that, and I can show examples of how student feedback or the assignments I do or the flexibility in some of the work that I do with my students has helped in terms of developing empathy. All of these are out there, they're available, and they're really interesting because they are generally valid, well replicated. You can compare your results with other people in other disciplines as well, which is really neat. And then you can see where you fit. It's still up to you to craft the narrative that goes along with it. This is just the data, right? As scientists, we get data and we can make the data say all kinds of things, good and bad. But it's good to have reliable data that allows you to put some things together. I have another one that I was hoping to do today, but I think we're going to run out of time. We're going to run out of time, right? Oh, yes. He didn't even hesitate. Oh, Jay, we're so out of time. Okay. Where it says teachingperspective.com/TPI. I don't know if you want to take a picture of that with your phone or whatever. I encourage you to go through this. And what it does is it will just open your eyes to some different ways of looking at your teaching styles. And it doesn't mean you're good or bad or anything. It's just another layer of information that tells you, oh, this is who I am in the classroom. This is where I could be. It's free. You can do it as many times as you want. I do this with my my future teachers. Every year I go through the process, and it will email you back an inventory and where you rate on the scale. And I'll wait to go on to the next one. It's developed at the University of British Columbia by Pratt and Collins. But guys, I know I don't make any money by showing this. They don't make any money. It's all free. No, nobody, no. So that's what I like about it. That's why you can do it again. It doesn't cost you $100, whatever, every time you do it. Got it down?
Yeah.
She's got it. Good. So you're writing? Okay. This is what it looks like. So you can see there's the 5 different rating scales. And this is actually one I just did. And it shows where I am in terms of a particular characteristic. I'm going to just zoom in on my own screen here because I can't read that either. But what is it? Starting at the left and moving across, the first column is transmission. The second one is apprenticeship. The middle one, the yellow one, is developmental. The next one, fourth one, is nurturing. And then the final one is social reform. So you can see there's a mean and a median across. And the ones that are higher are ones that I am supposedly that's more represented in my personality based on the questions. I think there's 80 questions that you answer. So it tells me if I am, if I'm a teacher and I'm really low on nurturing, for example, that might be a red flag for me. It might be, oh, that's something that I could work on. Or I might ask other people their opinion. So it's just data. And then I can use that to say, do you think I'm a nurturer? I'm like, yeah, you are. Maybe the question set just didn't fit you. Or people are like, nah, you're not nurturing at all. It's spot on. You have some work to do. So it's a a really good tool if you haven't used a tool before. It's also a good way to introduce the people that you're working with to these kinds of experiences. So say people in your department haven't gone through this before, you could say, take this home, as I'm telling you to do, and then see what comes up. And you might be really interested. And it also allows you to become familiar with reflecting. And even when you look through the questions, and if you didn't finish it and you didn't send it in, there's some really interesting questions, and you read that and you go, you know, I've never thought of it that way. That's interesting. It kind of sparks that little bit of mental backlash and mental processing. So this is something that I would encourage you to take a look at for your own benefit. And I think, yes, on the next page, it tells you what each column emphasizes. So transmission, if you're low on transmission, it may say you are not as knowledgeable about the core content that you need. And you can see how each one of those goes down and it may match. There's also a teaching philosophy on the side. So if you're really strong in one or another, those are just some examples that I put down from people who are recognized as being particularly in touch with teaching philosophies. So you can see that we're starting to put together some ideas in terms of your own reflection, maybe some tools, some peer assessment, some student feedback, maybe in some inventories. I talked about Myers-Briggs. It's the Young scale or whatever, and it goes through and it rates you on these extrovert, introvert, feeling, and judging. And you can see where, or sorry, extrovert, intuitive, feeling, and judging. So when I did mine, I am highly extroverted and intuitive. Clearly, I'm not much of a judger at all. I'm at 1%, so there isn't much there, but it compares you to two different levels in the scale, and you can see who you are. It also talks a bit about careers you might choose. It doesn't mean if you do this particular scale and it says don't be a teacher, but you're already a successful teacher, that, you know, that's fine. But it's just more information that might help you in your understanding of self. Mine's pretty accurate, and like I say, I do it regularly just to show students who haven't really stopped to think about themselves, and the younger students that you are working with probably have had less opportunity to reflect on who they are. So it's good for you, but sometimes it's also good for your learners. And maybe there's a learner who's on one end of the extreme and you're on the other. It's like, I can't figure out why we don't get along. And then it's like, oh, there we go. We just have to understand each other better because we are very different people. How do we work back towards the middle? Has anyone done scales like this before? Is this interesting? Okay. I hope you find it interesting. I think even from just a personal standpoint, it's kind of neat to see what a scale says about you and whether you agree, whether it's, you know.
You should have come here 20 years back, actually.
Is there a time machine? Yeah.
No, when we started teaching 23 years back, so that would have helped a lot by this time.
Yeah. Well, I hope it would still help. You have another 20 years left. What are you talking about?
Thanks.
Okay. Teaching portfolios. And again, that's something that I have an informal teaching portfolio in my office. And what it is a drawer. And whenever I get a letter or a card or something, or if someone interviews me for the newspaper, or if I'm on a website, I print it off and I put it all in that drawer. And I don't have to do anything with it. But when it comes time to put my evidence together, I can go into that drawer and go, oh yeah, I forgot that. Oh, I forgot. And even during the year, when you have to put in your annual review, having a drawer where you can put all those little things in is just so handy. Is it considered culturally inappropriate to swear in front of a group of other faculty?
To what?
To swear?
No.
To use foul language? Okay.
No. You swear all the time.
In my portfolio drawer, I also have what I call an oh shit or shitty lesson folder, or I'm having a shitty day. So that's the only profanity I'm gonna use today. And what that means is I have had a lesson that I thought went so badly. You can edit that out from the video, right? The swearing. That I think, why did I become a teacher? I'm useless. I am no good. I just want to quit and run into the hills. I open up that folder and there are thank you cards from students. There are cards from my department head, from other people. If I went and did a guest lecture at someone's class, for example, and they sent me a note, and those are all the days that remind me that I'm going to be okay. I'm doing good work. I'm helping people. Folks recognize what I'm doing. And all of that contributes to your growth and understanding as a teacher. So I have the big pile of garbage, but I have that other folder for when I have just the worst lesson. I'm like, oh, what have I done? Like, I've taught this 100 times. How could it have been so bad? I can open that up and look at it and go, hey, I know what I'm doing. It's going to be okay. I feel good about myself. I can go for a walk and be calm and everything like that. Back and remind yourself. So I'm encouraging you as a part of this identity creation to keep those little artifacts, those little, like even sticky notes that people give you. You know, you come by and somebody put one on your door and it was like, thanks for your help today. You know, the big smiley face or whatever. Those things can be really powerful in keeping you going. And it also means that someone took the time to say something nice about it, which means a lot. And that's why it's not just a folder in my inbox, but I have one of those too. But those handwritten notes that people get, I'm always jealous of people who are organized enough. They have a stack of notes and they'll send you, you know, a little card and like, oh, I wish I could be more like them because I feel really good. They sent me a card and I wish I would do that for other people. Anyway, that's the whole notion of a portfolio and keeping those artifacts and evidence of what you're doing. I'm going to skip this over time, but it was kind of your question earlier. What kind of teacher do I want to be?
Yeah.
So that's something that you can, if you go for a walk tonight or a bike ride, or if you have some quiet time, that's just something I want you to think about, because you can make a lot of really good things happen once you convince this thing that you want that to happen, and the other parts will fall into place because
mind is everything.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's where it starts. And I wanted you to discuss with your elbow partner, but maybe your elbow partner will be who you're walking with tonight or bike riding with. But I want to get to this. This is a file that was sent to you to read in your spare time, because I know you all have lots of spare time. But it talks about the myth of the natural teacher. And I just want to explode that right here and now. That idea that person who, when they were in elementary school and lined all their stuffed animals up and taught them and everything like that, those are the people who become teachers. It's not true. There is no gift from above that makes you a teacher. Anybody can be a great teacher. And so many of us go through our lives really humbly going, well, I'll never be as good as them, or I'm not quite like them. And that means that organizations like your teacher organization don't put the time and effort and money into encouraging people and supporting them and providing that ability for folks to become better teachers. I'm going to be in so much trouble. This is all recorded. I'm just thinking about things I'm saying after the fact. Anyway,
Edit it.
what's that?
They will edit it.
Yeah. Okay, good. Pick up the stuff I said about Apple too. So, but what happens is, if you have a passion, and you talked about who you were as individuals, you all are special, unique, wonderful people. If you were all the same, what a rotten experience students would have. There would not be those, you know, there wouldn't be the dog with the hurt leg, right? That story would never have happened because some teacher would have said, we don't work with stray animals, so that, you know, just that dog has to be put down and we'll move on to, you know, there's some compassion there. Or you talked about your instructor who is really strict and you loved him, but probably no one else in your class did, right? Nobody. But how awesome is that? So they love the next person. That's because teaching draws in people with such a wide range of backgrounds and interests. And that's what makes, it's not this, it's this. It's good days and good experiences. And that's what, again, that's that friction that makes it rub against each other. And if you don't have people who are true to themselves and understand who they are, then you don't have that variety. And I think this myth of the natural teacher really ruins it for a lot of folks. I'll never be as good as so-and-so because they were born to be awesome.
Wrong.
But they're like, they tell good jokes, they're funny, they're whatever, they dress nice. Like that doesn't make a good teacher. But in a lot of places, that's what makes a good teacher. If they look like they're a good teacher. Maybe they're not, but people have this misconception in their mind. But every one of you probably already are fantastic teachers. The fact that you are here and learning means you're going to be even better. But when someone comes to you and you are mentoring, we heard some good mentorship stories today. Let people know that through hard work and dedication and understanding, they could be as good as they could possibly be. If you change this mindset that anyone can be a good teacher, then we will have the most amazing group of people who are passionate about different things and connect with students in different ways. The same way we talked about that scale, and you may be on one side and your student may be on the other. Well, they just may need to have a class with a teacher who's right here, right with them, and say, I've been there. That happened to me. I failed this class. It's funny because some of the classes I teach, especially with my PhD students, I said, in this class, I had the lowest mark in my entire program when I went through. And now I'm the teacher. Can you even believe that? And we always have a good laugh about it and everything. I just can't fathom it. But those kinds of things, if I would have given up because I did poorly on that class, now I still passed and everything, obviously, but would that have sent me in another direction? Possibly. But because someone mentored me and said, anyone can be successful if they want to be, then I was able to get to that point. I think, oh, yes, last thing, teaching philosophy. Not teaching philosophy, but teaching philosophy. I've asked you a few questions throughout the day today. Who are you? What do you want to be? All of those
Philosophical.
vary. And it was my sneaky way of starting to get you to think about creating a teaching philosophy. Has anyone done that before? Have you ever been asked to put together your philosophy of teaching?
Nobody.
Okay. Wow. Oh, today's your lucky day. All right. Okay, before we go here, why do you think it's important to have one?
But that, that allows you to assess yourself, okay, why you're here what do you want to do in life? I told you you want to make this earth a better place to live in. So what way you can contribute towards that by becoming a good teacher? So that's that motivational or inspiring that helps you. So philosophy is very important.
Fabulous. Thank you. Any other thoughts about why it might be important to have one?
It motivates others to.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The motivational. Yeah. Other thoughts?
I think a teaching profession that contributes towards the society much more than other professions.
Correct.
So that's why, no doubt with the time, the value of teacher is going down as compared to other professions. But if you look from the older times, since we can learn now, the teaching is the profession now, the development, whatever the development you are seeing around us.
Is due to teachers.
In each and every field, it is all because of the good teaching.
Education. Yeah.
It's all because
It tricked you, right? So what you are doing is you're starting to write your philosophy. So the three examples we had, if you wrote those down,
All philosophical answers.
you are starting to develop that. So you may say, what is your philosophy on life? That's what you were talking about. All of you who have shared, and the other things that you've shared today, that is part of your teaching philosophy, because you are not tearing yourself apart, you're staying connected. And so your philosophy of life is guiding you as a teacher. And I've heard it from every single one of you. What that means is that you can have this document when you actually complete a teaching philosophy, and you can be reminded, like, what are the things that I value? Why is it important? Why am I doing this? It's that big picture. And you can start with, a question like that. And then you would just write something down. So I would say, we had more time, not the time, we're not supposed to worry about time, right? That's what that student said at lunch, right? Time is more important, not money. Okay. But I would ask you to do this. So with the three gentlemen who shared, I would say, write down what you just said. Okay. And then I might ask you another question. What role does it play for teachers in teaching? And some of you have already talked about that. It gives us a sense of purpose. It directs us in a particular area. So as you start to answer those questions, they begin to pile up and you actually get a document that looks like a teaching philosophy. Okay. So I would ask you that question. Waiting till the speed writers are writing it. Let them go. Good. Awesome. Okay. And then you would write it down. Okay. And you would have a place that would change over time.
Yeah.
20 years later.
Yeah.
Like you said.
Yeah.
So here's an example of one of mine.
I will mention needs of students and
Now, believe me, I didn't write that in a day.
Hmm.
That took a long time.
Maybe a decade.
A lot of reflection, and probably what I would have written in my first year of teaching would look nothing like that. I added to it. So this is where I talk a bit more about experiential learning. So I have an actual area that I'm interested in.
Welcome the discomfort.
So there's a lot of reflection there. There's a lot of looking at what I do in all the teaching and learning environments I'm a part of, and being able to say, I don't get it right. And sometimes it's going to be a disaster, but I don't worry about that because in the end, it benefits the students. And if you think that was enough, I talk about my classroom. So my learning spaces are democracies in the sense that everyone is made to feel that they have a say in what is going to happen and their input is valued. So right off the bat, students know that they can say, I'm not comfortable with this, or I feel like I'm not a part of what's going on, and we can talk about it. That's just my philosophy about my classroom. So over time, you could go from those statements that people have shared to a really deep and rich way of looking at who you are as an instructor and what happens in your classroom and who your students are and the process. And all of that, again, is contributing to your identity as a teacher. And I will modify this a little bit, but I forget about this. And then I'll do a workshop on teaching philosophies and I'll go back and look at it and be like, oh, did I actually write that? I like that. And you'll surprise yourself by doing that kind of work, setting it aside and then going back to it later. And there's some things that have, even though I have rewritten this about 900,000 times, that are still in the very first one, that I know that's a core part of who I am. And it makes me feel really good that I haven't written that out or changed so much that some of the things that were important to me in the very beginning of teaching are still there. And so there's comfort in that. There's insecurity in the growth and change, but there's a lot of comfort in those core pieces that are.
What was the first part of your first presentation? That ever keep on learning forever? Something
Yeah,
like
lifelong learner.
Huh?
Lifelong learner.
Like,
Yeah.
For me, that was the most important point in the entire day.
There you go. Good. And I got it over with right off the bat instead of later on. Thank you for sharing that. if you're not sure how to get your philosophy going, these are some of the starters. So there's stems that you can use just to think about, you know, how do I perceive myself? What do I think about students? What are my end goals? So if you are writing and trying to articulate that philosophy that you have in the classroom, the nice thing about this is that you can also share with your students. You could put it on your syllabus. It doesn't have to be right at the front, but maybe you do want it right up front. So students know what to expect and what kind of place that they are learning, what kind of person they are learning with. Sometimes people put quotes from other learners or other philosophers or other researchers. I find it's really helpful to have your own quote. It's okay to quote yourself. And so students know what's going on, and you can say this comes from my teaching philosophy, and it gives you a sense of what happens in this classroom. It's a good place to have debate as well, and to have that discussion with your learners. I think this is the last one. No. Oh, okay. This is the last one. Oh gosh. What was circulated this morning? I took these out of a book called Simple Truths About Teaching, which you can purchase. So I'm not trying not to break copyright. I'm trying to give them credit for what they are. But these are just some things to think about when you are thinking about your teacher identity. And they may be a line or a concept or an idea that you read that and you go, it's fantastic. That's exactly how I feel about my teaching. They also may show you that in a few years, things have changed, and a quote on this list may not have the same significance as it once did, but maybe there's one on the back page that was, oh, that's how I am now. I've changed, or I want to add this one to this one now because I've had a chance to do that kind of development. So again, just another resource for you to think about teaching in a metaphorical way. Some of these talk about gardens, some of them talk about animals, some of them talk about students in particular ways. And I think that's it. That's a lot. I hope it wasn't too much today. I hope it wasn't too in the clouds.
And everybody thinks tomorrow will not be more than this.
Yeah. And we'll be done early tomorrow.
Okay, that's good. Because there's some time limit for assimilation.
Yeah.
That's why you are mostly 1 hour or around that. After that, you begin to lose the track.
Yes. Me too, as a teacher.
Thank you very much.
All right. I look forward to getting together tomorrow. We're going to talk about assessment. So bring a syllabus, please. If you have exams or assessment materials that you have made.
Is it for bachelor's or master's program?
Whatever you would like.
Whatever we.
Both,
We have
all of
everything.
them. Yes,
We have everything.
bring it all, yeah.
Question papers will be difficult.
Yes,
Syllabus, it is easy.
yes.
Question papers are difficult because there can be some issues with syllabus and presentation.
Yeah.
And
But as he said, teachers have a big role in building a nation. And building, and our country badly needs good people,
Yeah.
good citizens, a lot of junk out there. So teachers have got a role in that also. So if you can inspire in a class, in any way, that's a positive
Yeah.
contribution
Absolutely.
towards the country and world as a whole.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think we need that everywhere, in every discipline.
Because the
Yeah.
population is so huge and resources running out so quickly, everybody wants to cut everybody in one way or another. Like it's cutthroat here. So you really need to inculcate in people that you can save the environment, you can save the resources. So that's also a responsibility of the teacher.
You just wrote the second half of your
Yes.
teaching philosophy, right?
Yes.
You're just adding to it.
You wrote the philosophy.
Yeah.
now he
You
can
wrote
write
the philosophy.
Yeah, now you can write a book. Yeah.
You are about to be launch pad.
No,
All right.
I just,
We'll meet.
Yeah,
Okay, sir, we have some time.
Yeah.
It was a great thing, sir.
thank you.
And we will see,
Mm.
sir,
Tomorrow.
we will tell our views also.